Hello, welcome to American College of Healthcare Executive Southeast Texas Chapter's Fireside Chat on Coaching for Success. I am Mitali Paul, an administrator with Houston Methodist. I serve on the ACHE board and have been a member of the organization for 20 years. Thank you for joining us. I'm delighted to host a chat with two exceptional leaders who will share their coaching journeys and insights with us. But first, I want to let you know how you can get involved. We'll chat for about 45 minutes and then we'll open it up for questions. Here's how to submit a question. Text DEBAKE to 37607 on your phone or join online at pollev.com and enter DEBAKE. Submit your questions at any time. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can. So now, let's get started. Diane Scott is a Georgetown-trained certified executive coach. She's worked with leaders across Fortune 500 companies in technology, healthcare, manufacturing, and public policy. She's a nurse by training and a former healthcare administrator at the University of Pittsburgh. And we have Dr. Shlomit Shal, who is Executive Vice President and Chief Physician Executive at Houston Methodist and President and CEO of Houston Methodist Physician Organization. She's a trained retina surgeon. Welcome, and thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
So coaching plays a critical role in leadership success, whether it's enhancing clinical or leadership skills, navigating career advancement, preventing burnouts, improving communication, addressing performance issues, or maintaining a lifetime commitment for learning and development. So to get started, Diane, can you define coaching for us?
Sure. Thanks, Mitali, and thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm Diane Scott. I am an executive coach, and my North Star is developing leaders. And 1/3 of my clients are healthcare executives, 1/3 are physicians and physician leaders, and 1/3 are tech companies. I work at Netflix and eBay, for example. When I call myself a recovering healthcare administrator. And while I was a healthcare administrator, I knew that in order to get the best outcomes, developing leaders was the key. So we would send them to different facilitations, we would send them to training and encourage their master's degrees, and a lot of them went on to do that. But what I really noticed is that all those were very helpful, but people need they have individual goals and career mindsets and different things that they need assistance with to help them achieve their potential. And through a lot of research, I discovered that coaching is what moves the needle for individuals. So executive coaching is a development process. It's rooted in adult theory, based in the field of positive psychology. There's quite a bit that goes into the background of how you coach. But people go to coaching to achieve their potential, to find out how to navigate career paths that are either long-term or short-term. I've discovered that a lot of people understand what they like in the big picture of their career, but on an everyday basis, not as much. And sometimes it's to mitigate behaviors that don't serve them or mindsets that don't serve them. How coaching actually looks is that it's a 6-month process, 6 to 8 month process where you develop a relationship with a coach one-on-one. It's confidential between you and hopefully a certified coach. And what you do is they're one-on-one sessions, usually an hour virtually or in person. And the difference between coaching and a lot of other types of conversations is that it is a process. It is set with goals. Often, if the person's immediate supervisor is involved, it involves alignment with them, and sometimes we'll measure emotional intelligence and some personality inventory testing. We do 360s with people during this time as well. But it is that continuous, bi-weekly, sometimes weekly process that helps move the needle for most people.
Okay. So Dr. Shal, how do you differentiate mentoring and coaching, in your opinion?
Yeah, in medicine, we are used to mentor. Specifically in academic medicine, we teach the next generation of clinicians and scientists, and I'm a surgeon, taught many surgeons in my career. That's mentorship. You're teaching a skill. I think coaching is a little bit different. As Diane nicely described, it's really in the context of becoming a better leader. And as physicians, we are never trained to be leaders. You know, for me, I got to where I got, I think, thanks to really intentional leadership training that I took in different parts of my career, but that's not the regular path of a regular physician. So mentoring, I would say, everything that we do in the academic setting, you find a mentor, you learn several skills, and a mentor can be, you know, part of a coach for you, but really coaching when we talk, and I think when we talk about today in this setting, it's about coaching to become a better leader.
Great. Diane, would you like to add anything in terms of differentiation between mentor and coaching?
Yeah, and when I think about physician coaching in particular, physicians come to leadership a little bit later in the game because of the training is so darn long.
Tell me about it.
Is it over yet?
No.
Okay. And so, but I find it interesting that a coach can help bring about leadership in physicians rather quickly because physicians catch on quick. A lot of the same types of processes they use to assess a patient, to see the situation, they're able to pull all that through and translate that into leadership very quickly. I look at mentorship, you can have many mentors. It's not a planned every other week often, it can be, but coaching is much more of a process. It's a little bit more delineated in terms of goal setting and bringing in alignment with leadership, etc. So I think it's a little bit different, and often mentors are within an organization or within your immediate scope, whereas a coach can be from the outside.
Well, one caveat about physicians and work with coach, I absolutely agree with you. Of course, I agree that physicians are very smart and very quick to study, and actually we are trained to study, and most of us are really almost professional students. But in a work with a coach, I think the caveat is that physicians need to almost look up to a coach, trust their skills, and listen. Because, you know, if we engage and you're my coach, you're not a physician, and you're trying to coach me to be a better leader, and I look down at you at some point because I think I'm smarter, I'm quicker, whatever I think I am, that's going to be detrimental to our relationship, and I would not be able to get as much as I could from this relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I coach in other areas that aren't healthcare, the airline industry and tech, and I don't know anything about that. I don't know actually what they physically do. But coaching physicians and healthcare leaders is the only type of coaching that it really helps to have a background in that area. A physician would not accept a coach if they didn't get their world. Because your bad day is a lot different than other people's bad days. And so once they understand that you get their world, then you can move forward. But without a healthcare background, it's
and
hard.
It doesn't necessarily means that a coach for healthcare executives needs to be either a physician or a nurse or somebody clinical, but at least somebody that understands the healthcare complex structure and really the tensions and the burdens that are on leaders in healthcare, which are different than other industries.
The stakes are much higher.
It's life and death, right?
Much higher.
Yeah. So what are some circumstances where you would recommend a coach as a leader? When does someone, need a coach?
So for me, this is my personal perspective, just because of my background and how I value official training and learning throughout my career. I really believe that leaders are not born, leaders are made. And if leaders are made, the more you train them, the better they will be. So, in my role, the chairs of all the departments, they report to me, and I started when I came to Houston Methodist, really an expectation that coaches will work with our chairs. Now, not every chairs accept, and then I think one of the important things is that a chair would accept the opportunity to work with a coach. But I really believe that it's an investment that that the institution can make in our own leaders. And also something to remember is that a leader of a department, like a chair of a department, has enormous influence on everything down the line. So if we want to lead medicine, if we want to be the best, we're named best in Texas, right? Number one in Texas. If we want to continue that, then we need to invest in our leaders. So in that regard, I really, try to really pair every one of our chairs with a coach. Not only chairs, but also executive leaders that are under my kind of responsibility, encourage them to work with a coach. So this is one setting. And this is really for the leader to work with a coach to become a better leader. And it doesn't matter if they're new or established leaders, or they've been with us for a while, doesn't matter. I think it's most helpful when you're brand new, right?
Yeah.
But still, I think everybody can improve, everybody can learn. So this is one setting. The other setting is where we observe behaviors. I say the organization, observe behaviors that are hindering success within that leader, and we want to give them a chance to get better. So this is kind of a remediation coach, and I think that's why the coaching got a kind of a bad rep.
Yes.
But there are two kinds of coaching. Diane, what do you think?
There is, and I do both. Well, people that are achieving their potential or in a new role or developing the expertise to set them on a path for future roles. But sometimes you have communication styles that get in the way. You'll have somebody incredibly talented that has either a blind spot or often doesn't know how to navigate.
So I'm an ophthalmologist, so I'm going to tell you what a blind spot is. So really a blind spot is that, everybody else can see that there's a problem and you cannot see that there's a problem. You might even think that it's a strength that you have.
Can you fix blind spots?
It's a whole new lecture. But I'm a swimmer. That's what I do for fun. And I have a coach for swimming. And I think that's the best analogy, because everybody can understand that I swim in a certain style. I have my certain, style that I, developed over the years since I was a kid. But then my coach can see what is hindering me, and he can correct, small things.
Yeah, and he has a perspective.
He has a perspective that is different.
That is different.
That I can't see. So I can have, cameras above water, underwater, from the sides. I can video myself, whatever that is. But then this perspective and this experience of a coach is really priceless for me in swimming, and then therefore also in executive coaching, similar.
Yeah, well stated.
Yeah. And then you have onboarding coaching a lot of times when you have someone that's new to the organization, not just new to the role, but new to the organization, where you need someone to kind of show you around and show you the ropes and be able to help you navigate through the different challenges. And as both of you mentioned, that healthcare is extremely complex industry. And so as the challenges that we face as leaders and as physician leaders or executives keep getting more complex, the need to be able to have someone that can kind of hold your hand and help you be the best version of yourself.
So I would like to ask Diane, if you're not part of the organization, and let's say I, as a chief physician executive, I'm hiring you to work with one of my leaders.
Sure.
And you don't know anything about the organization. So how do you figure that out? And, do you need the background? How does that work?
I love to be prepared. So it's rare that I go into an organization and know nothing about it. It's important for me to understand a little bit of a background of an organization, especially if it isn't healthcare. I have to figure out how the revenue streams come in, because that really does impact the leaders. Because most leaders and most physicians get coaching because they're good and they're getting great. not because of mitigation of behaviors. So I just wanted to make sure that I added that in. But knowing that background, hearing it from different perspectives from around, it all adds to the capacity for you to coach that person.
So how do you get that background?
You listen, you ask, you look up, you prepare. Now, what a person needs within that is your ability to tune into them and how they feel that they fit in with that culture. So it's, you understand enough. You need to know enough about the organization, but it's more important almost to understand how they feel like they fit in the organization.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
And then you do work with, if it's sponsored by the organization, you do work with the executive sponsors, the leaders within the organization to kind of understand what are the goals out of this coaching engagement, what are there any challenges, is this more to help them, is it to remedy something, and that probably gives
I think that's very important, the
It's
alignment and expectations and the goals. So the way we work with coaches, with our chairs, we have an initial, first of all, we let the chair pick their coach out of a menu of coaches. So we don't say, you need to work with Diane. You can interview different kind of coaches that usually have an experience within our organization, to your point. Yeah. But some of them may be new as well, and the chair picks who he or she wants to work with. And then we have a meeting with the three of us, the chair, me, and the coach. And I usually say, hello, I'm paying. And so I think it's important because,
it is important.
Who are you working for? I think it's also important for, the coachee to understand that this is an investment by the organization. So I am paying, and you can tell me how much, but I am paying and investing in you because I believe that you are, I like that, you're good and I want you to be great. And here are the things that I see that you need to work on. And what do you think? So we have this initial meetings, and then we have a follow-up, usually every 3 months or sometimes every 6 months, to just say, okay, are we, this feel right? Are we making progress? What do you feel? It's a lot about perception as well, and level of comfort. And what I see is that, the beginning it's a little bit awkward, and then it gets better as time goes by.
It's always interesting when you come out, we call those alignment meetings. The first meeting after you have an alignment meeting, to talk to the coachee and say, what do you think of that? Because they're usually in the same ballpark. What you would like to see and what they would like to see are within the same ballpark. But sometimes they have a little different bend on what they want. Coaching is about helping people figure out what they want. It is such a hard question. And so it's influenced by their boss, their supervisor, their organization. But they themselves have to also make that determination as to what they want personally. That's why coaching is different than training.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One of our very, very smart chairs told me, and I thought it was fascinating, that every time somebody comes to him, they come with a problem, and he needs to kind of serve them and help solve the problem. And problems come to him all the time. But the time with his coach is the time for him to talk about his problemms.
That's a great perspective.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's great.
It's their one opportunity. Rarely do healthcare leaders or physicians cancel on me. Ever.
Good.
And rarely are they late.
Okay, yeah.
And they're surgeons.
Be late.
They're surgeons. Because it's so important to them they have this opportunity, and they set the agenda for the meeting. We have our goals, but I always say, what do you want to speak about today? And sometimes they are just loaded. They really look forward to this. The investment, I can't say enough about. It is an investment, and the high potential leaders and the opportunity, it's an honor to be able to see somebody feel like they're being really recognized for their potential.
Yeah, and then when the relationship is successful, then that individual obviously wins, but the organization wins big time.
Yeah. So have you used a coach? And if you have, what were the criteria or characteristics that you were looking for, or the criteria that you used to pick a coach
Yeah.
for yourself?
So I was when I told you I took several leadership development courses and official training, and one of the best ones was ELAM, Executive Leadership in Academic Medicine, specifically tailored for women in academic medicine to become leaders. And I took that when I was initially appointed as chair of ophthalmology at the University of Massachusetts. So, about 8 years ago. And, there in that course, it's a year-long course, they talked a lot about coaching. And we had meeting with coaches and the importance of coaching. And that kind of was the seed that was implanted. And then years afterwards, not immediately, but years afterwards, when I became the president of the medical group at UMass, I asked for a coach. So when I got hired for that position, I said, you know what? I know that's a good idea to work with a coach. Can you invest in me so I can work with a coach? But I had no really understanding or experience in what I was looking for. And as you pointed before, I was very comfortable with mentoring. I have many mentors and really learned a lot from my mentors, but I never had this intensive, once a week, twice a month, whatever relationship with a coach. And interestingly enough, I'm curious what Diane thinks, but the first thing I said, I'm in a man's world. I want a coach that would be a man, so he could open the doors for me for this man's world. So curious to make a pause and
before I answer, did you interview several or did you get this one?
Well, I interviewed, but I decided I wanted a man to kind of show me how men do things so I can fit in. Let's see what you think about that.
I disagree. The distinction, like I said, it helps if they have a healthcare knowledge.
Yes. Okay. But does it matter if it's a man or a woman?
I strongly don't think so.
Okay, interesting.
I strongly don't think so. I think it matters more that if you click.
So let me tell you the chapter B. So it didn't work. I mean, he was fantastic, very experienced. Helped many other people in my own organization, had raving reviews, but we did not click.
You didn't have the chemistry.
Yeah, well, I tried. Maybe I didn't try enough. I don't know, but it didn't work. And then I changed, and I had a woman coach, and that worked great. And then I moved organizations, and that's good that you're reminding me I need to look for a coach. And to your point, you said, when you're new at the organization, you have to kind of find your way. So I do see Dr. Boom as my coach. I do see Roberta Schwartz as my coach, Mick Cantu as my coach. At least in the first year, you have to develop these relationships, and maybe perhaps now it's a time for me to look for a coach.
Pretty great coaches, and to almost have a selected team to do that. It's important to have almost an army because different people give you different things. So
obviously, with limited resources, we're always looking at return on investment when we're making investments. So as a leader, how do you measure the value or success of a coaching relationship, be it for yourself or for one of your leaders? What do you look for?
So, we usually have, as we discussed, we have goals, right, for people. Some of the goals are around blind spots and specific behaviors that we really need the person to modify. And it's very difficult, after adolescence. If you have kids, that after adolescence it's very difficult to change somebody. You can mold them when they're kids. When they're adolescents, they develop this armor, and then you can't change them anymore. So, going into this relationship, coach-coachee, And wanting to work on something requires energy, requires time, and this is, we're talking about, in our case, we're talking about senior leaders in this organization. These are not free, people with extra time. So they need to invest the time, they need to invest the energy, they need to be serious, and then also, as we talked about, they need to accept criticism, that they actually behave in a certain way that hinders them in their success. So that's how I measure. I see, and we don't expect it to change immediately, but over time, if this behavior changes, and then, the leader becomes more polished, if you will, and needs, to achieves their goals that we talked about, that's a success for me. Diane, do you think something?
Yeah,
I agree. And the alignment meeting between the sponsor, often the boss, is also important in the check-in, what have you seen. The one thing that most people don't realize is that they also own telling people what they're working on. Because changes are hard, shifts can happen. Dialing things up, dialing things back. But if I tell you, I am working on not interrupting, you automatically think that I'm better at it. So it's also up to me to be able to tell you what I am working on, and people start to notice more. Just hoping that somebody notices a change rarely happens.
So that's a great, that's actually a great point.
Thank you.
When I did my first 360, and I can tell you 360 are painful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're great.
The first time you
but
do,
they're great. Exactly.
you did your 360?
I have.
Okay. So first time I did it, it's like, okay, are these people, I mean, they're not seeing how great I am?
Real quick question. A 360, just for the listeners who may not know, is getting information from people that are around you, your peers, your boss, and sometimes people that you lead. So,
yes. So what I did with my first 360, first of all, it was painful to read, okay? Because I thought, perfect, yeah. But
something's wrong with them. I'm perfect.
Yeah. So it's really interesting to see what people notice as something that, and I can give you an example of something small that I changed, but actually helped me. I have a very good memory, and I really don't need to write anything. I remember. But people said in the 360, she meets with me and she doesn't take any notes, so how do I know that she's really following up? So I started to take notes because of that. And it was like a painful thing for me to kind of carry a notebook. But now I am carrying a notebook everywhere. And I think it helps me. It helps, the person that I'm. And you met with me. I took notes, right? Yes.
No comments.
I did.
No, and I think that's another way of measuring the success is that, like Diane mentioned, if you're intentional about the area that you're working on, and you're letting your board of directors or your inner circle know that, or your stakeholders know, this is what I'm working on. Give me feedback on that.
Yes.
It's kind of good for you in the moment to be able to correct yourself. How did that presentation go? How did that talk go? What did you think about this or that? But yeah, 360s are painful, but I think it's important because you have to know how your peers are looking at you. You have to know how you are communicating. You may think you're the best communicator, but it's really the perception of the receiver.
Are you doing 360 for everyone that you coach?
Almost everybody. All the time. I highly recommend it. I find that for leaders, they often want to have the opinion of the people with who they lead. When actually who really has a stake in their self-strategy is much managing up. It's their boss, it's their boss's peers. I call them diagonals. It's key stakeholders that may not be in their matrix. So where most people will identify 8-10 people that call them boss, I say look the other direction. There's a lot of work that goes into a 360 before. I do qualitative ones where I speak to the leaders and identify the trends. There are thousands of quantitative pieces that are out there. I like a qualitative approach too, because you also get to have an opportunity to speak to somebody about a leader that they really don't think about that much in volume. And the whole process is a strategy, from who you pick to what you want to learn from them to setting it up to the follow-up. It's if you do it well, it's a self-strategy for you to continue. So I do it a lot.
And you repeat it, or they take it once and that's it?
Generally, well,
because it's painful. You do it in the beginning and then you're working, but do you repeat it ever?
it's not as painful. It's painful for you to sit and wait for the results.
Yeah.
And sometimes reading the results and hearing the results can be painful too.
It can be painful too. The answer is, if I have a continuance in a coaching contract, most of my leaders ask for repeat contracts, which is very nice. It depends is the answer. I repeat it if we need to do some ongoing progress, or we have something that a milestones that we have to hit. I'll do check-ins. Sometimes it's smaller, sometimes it's a whole repeat. I do a qualitative check-in for newly hired leaders that have been in their job at 6 months, because at the 6-month mark you can course correct and your reputation isn't solid. But after 6 months, it's rather set. But that 6-month mark is key to, if there's some shifts you need to make, you can make them. And people will notice, and they like being asked. People like being on this list.
Oh, okay. That's
They
good to know.
do. It's an honor to be able to talk to somebody. I rarely have somebody not want to be on the list.
Interesting.
Occasionally, when they don't, when they don't want to is when they want to talk about their boss and they don't. There's issues with them. But it's really important. With the 360, it is all confidential. It's trends, not examples, not discussions about whoever. So that's huge.
Yeah, you shouldn't try to predict who said what.
No.
Yeah.
And we all know with the write-in one, we all look at the comments at the end, even though they're not statistically significant. One person can say this about you, and you ruminate on it.
Yeah.
So it's very, and you wonder who said it. In a qualitative 360, you don't get that.
Yeah, and one thing about human beings is that we can have 1,000 good comment and one bad one, and we're going to focus on the bad one. It almost hurts, right? To the core, it hurts.
So how do you maintain that confidentiality? You mentioned confidentiality, and we all know obviously that's important as a part of that relationship, especially if you have an executive that's sponsoring another executive or a leader, right? And you have the alignment meeting. How do you maintain what you need to share with the sponsor versus what you should not share? And make sure that the person you're coaching is comfortable.
So first, before she answers, I will tell you how we're doing it here.
Yeah.
I do not want to know what the coach's discussion with the person is, because I truly believe that this is a safe space for our people, our leaders, to say whatever they want to. So I do not ever want to know what they talked about. I do the check-ins, and I, listen to what is the perception of how the relationship with the coach works. Are they achieving any goals, and what I can do to help? I will never, I think that's very important, call the coach to complain about one of my people. If something happens with one of our leaders, I will talk to them first, not to the coach. So even though the coach is working for me, they're really there for the leader. I'm just paying, because I'm investing. But it's completely, I see it as a different compartment, and I am not involved.
It's thank you, but it's very rare that a sponsor, usually the boss, calls and asks me, what did you talk about here and there? It's almost never. If I'm going to talk to anybody's supervisor, I sure as heck am going to talk to you first and say, hey, I have a meeting with your boss on Thursday. It's also a strategy. I look at self-strategy as something that's missing a lot from healthcare leaders and physician leaders. It's a strategy for, I'm going to talk to your boss. What does she need to hear that you're working on? But I maintain the confidentiality of the conversations. I don't think I've had but a rare case where a sponsor has asked me a question where I said, I can't talk about that. They just don't. They respect that confidentiality.
Yeah.
I have had leaders say, something's wrong, and then usually I don't talk much until I get back to the leader, but I have had that. But again, coaching is generally for
So
high
they
potential.
called you before they called the individual?
Oh, yes.
Oh, really? So that I never
Yeah,
do, because I
that
think it's
happens.
disrespectful.
But that's
Yeah.
okay. That's okay. They feel safe with me talking it over, but it's not. The phone isn't cold before I'm calling the leader and say, let's talk.
So, one of the roles that I see that
Yeah.
I have is really be a coach as well. And that's why actually I'm interested, and Mitali knows that, I'm interested in getting official training, not only, for people in positions like my position, but also other physicians,
Yeah.
to get this training of how to coach, because I think it's super important. When you are a leader of people, your responsibility is for them to be successful.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there are techniques that probably is
Yeah.
taught in coaching schools, techniques to support people. So my success is really not my success, it's the success of everyone,
team.
of everyone that either reports to me or indirectly reports. So really the success of the organization. So I think what I'm interested in, we can talk afterwards, but how do we offer coaching specifically for physicians who are interested in taking coaching training?
Absolutely. So in terms of, have you ever had a situation, Diane, where something was shared with you which was either concerning or alarming, or where you know that you have to share that with the sponsor?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. One thing, a coach isn't protected by client privilege. So like an attorney or a physician, and it is the very first conversation I have with every single one of my clients. I think it wards off evil spirits because I have not had a legal issue yet. Thank you. But what I really make sure that people understand is that I'm not protected. If there is a concerning issue, I get the coachee to bring it up. If there is something illegal, it is within my ethics and standards, and that's why it's important to get proper training, that you need to forward it. Of course, I would tell the person, have I had that happen? No, I've always had the person be able to speak to it. And concerning issues usually aren't the illegal ones or something where it's, that massive policy or somebody's life was affected. It's usually, it's much less than that in terms of human resource type of issues. It's more the concerning, do I do A or do I do B? I think I should do A when maybe B would be in the best interest of the organization. It's usually not as acute. I haven't had too much acute, not in healthcare. So, I don't know.
Great, that's good to know. So to kind of ask Dr. Schall's question, how does one become a coach?
To become now there's different types of coaching. People do life coaching, which I think is very valuable. They teach you, the whole scope of your life in terms of food and exercise and relationships, etc. But to become a leadership coach, the best way is to go through a certified program through the International Coaching Federation. I'm very biased in that coaching programs that are in person really work the best, because as you're learning to coach, you're being coached.
But do you coach in person? Everybody coaches virtually now.
I've very rarely coach in person.
So
right?
what's the?
But as you're learning,
Uh-huh.
you're also being coached yourself. Everybody who attends a coaching program says it changes their life. You don't count on it changing your life. You're thinking it's going to teach you a skill, but it actually teaches you an introspection. And face-to-face, or a hybrid, both face-to-face and online, is much more intensive and in tune to looking at somebody's body language, picking up things. It helps develop your intuition. Physicians have intuition naturally, or no, not naturally. They learn intuition.
Trained.
Yeah, you're trained. Not everybody has that. So face-to-face helps develop that intuition for people that aren't. But an accredited, certified program is the key. It's the key and the gold standard.
How long is it?
Depends, usually 3 to 8 months. It's
What? It's not every day, right?
no. I went to Georgetown's program, which I'm biased, but it was a week a month for 6 months. an
A
entire
whole week?
Oh yeah.
Okay, we'll have to find something else for our physicians.
There's other programs that are out there, but you really want a certification because it leads, like anything that's certified, there's standardizations. You know, even within the organization that we speak today, having standards makes the quality control better. It also makes you more marketable, you know, or more valued if you don't read a book and start to coach.
So I have a question. You know,
Yeah.
when you coach people in different stages in their career. You can,
All different stages.
Right. So, are there coaches like subspecialties like we have in medicine, where you're an early career coach, you're a mid-career coach, you're a senior leader, you're a C-suite coach, you are like a? Is there something like that, or we're not there yet?
They're there. I think that people come to coaching often with a reason. If you do your job well, I bet that reason changes within months. I love when people come with goals, and the goals are so different at the end of 6 months, because if you really do that introspection. So if somebody comes in for a specific mid-season, early season, later on season, what happens if that changes, like in your head or in your mind? I really love the idea that physicians should be coached when they go from fellowship to attending. I think that when that bell,
it's a huge transition.
If I could wish upon a star, I would have programs at that moment. That is so hard to when you become an attending for the first time.
Correct. And I think it's
Yeah.
because of the big responsibility. I remember still my first surgery that I did. I did one a day. That day, my first day, one surgery, and I finished that surgery all sweating. And I did many like this in my fellowship, but somebody else was
When you're
watching.
it.
But when you're it, and especially when it's life of another individual in your hands,
Yep.
it's.
But how do you even navigate being an attending physician? How do you navigate like everybody coming to you for different things, even outside the medical care that you're giving or the surgical care that you're giving to a patient? It's almost like a professionalism. It's like a different job.
Well, I think there are several things, but that brings a point of further discussion. Should we, have coaching in medical school, maybe before even residency, before fellowship, before attending, so of how to become a physician? Because when we go to medical school, we are going usually, the majority of us went because of idealistic reasons. We wanted to make the world a better place. We wanted to help people. And then as you become an attendee, suddenly you're seeing, well, I have to bill, what is billing? And then there are, there's compliance, there are quality metrics, we measure you, all these dynamics are new, and sometimes it actually breaks the heart and the soul of people who went to medical school, and they find out after many years of training that it's not it's not what they expected, because it's not an ideal world over there, and it's hard work to be a physician. No matter which kind of physician you are, it's a hard work.
Now, and with healthcare leaders, you can switch and navigate. Healthcare leaders often see themselves in matrices, just like physicians. First you become this, then you could be this, or then you could be that. They don't really. I mean, I'm a coach of airlines and Netflix, and I'm a nurse. Like, I learned that I could go off that path to think differently. But when you're a physician and you've trained and you're in your 30s, what if you don't like it?
So that brings a different issue where, and then Mitali and I spoke about it as well. And actually we're doing a research study about that together. Is really, when we go to healthcare leadership, we don't see many physicians. We actually go to ACHE. The majority of ACHE are non-physicians and very few physicians. So why is that? And one of the hypotheses that we have is that you invest so many years, sometimes 30 years, like me, 30 years in my training, and then you're going to do something else. So it's almost a shift in gear, and the question is it worth it? Are you gonna feel good about it, or are you gonna feel bad about it? It's very complex.
Now, for physician leaders, I find that the biggest fork in their road is, when do I give up clinical practice?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's okay. We're having a coaching session right
you
now.
know what I mean? Like, when do I give that up, especially for surgeons?
Correct. And I'm a surgeon, and the first time that I haven't done surgery is really when I moved to this job, because I cannot be available for my patients to do surgery.
Or maintain that
and
expertise.
It was my greatest concern, and really, I even thought about it, is it something that I can do after all my training? And then I realized that the impact that I have in this role over many, many patients and healthcare workers and physicians is much bigger. But there is a sacrifice, 100% sacrifice. And when you go to, from a physician to a healthcare leader, absolutely you give up something.
You give up something. It really goes back to the crux of coaching, which is, what do you want? It's an incredibly hard question.
Well, I don't know what I want yet, so I don't know what people know what they want. But I think for sure it's something that it's going to be easier if somebody walks you along that line, even if you take that first leadership position as a physician, even if you still see patients, and let's say you're a chief quality officer in some hospital, whatever that is, a CMO, you still see patients, but then you have the administrative role. Would be great if somebody can hold your hand through this and problem solve with you and
navigate your career strategy. You have many strengths, but navigating negotiations and salary negotiations and what percentage of clinical and what percent, you all may not succeed really well at that.
Yeah, I don't know if a coach should do that. So I don't know.
But they talk to me about it. Like they talk. Where do I go? Like, how do I look at this? Where should I get? Like, and then I say, what do you want? Just turning it back to what you want, and helping them figure that out. That's always interesting.
So this has been a fascinating conversation, a very engaging one, and time has flown. We're coming up to the section where we're going to open it up for questions, and we have quite a few questions that are coming in, so that's excellent. But just before we jump into that, quickly, do either of you have a story, a success story? Because given that our topic today is coaching for success, I'd love for us to end the conversation today. Before we go into the Q&A section, do you have a success story that you could share with us where coaching led to success?
Sure, especially with healthcare leaders. There's just so many reasons why people achieve coaching, but a lot of my leaders, I have one in particular who didn't know what she wanted. She kept being promoted because she was a good clinician. She became a manager, then a director, then an AVP, because the jobs were offered to her, but she never actually realized what she wanted. And helping us flush through those pieces, she was happy with the big idea of her job, but not happy with her Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And equally, they're both important. Are you happy? Do you like your job today? Do you like the idea of your job? As we helped her navigate what she wanted, she actually found much more engagement in her current role versus keeping trying different roles and different jobs and different departments. And it was almost like she was going to a buffet and getting too many weird things on her plate and didn't know what she wanted. But once she had that clarity of knowing what she wanted, she was able to hone in on it and make choices and strategies around that for much more engagement in her current role without even switching.
So I will give you a success story from the organization point of view. So this is from the point of view of the individual, but in order for it to be a complete success story, it has to be a win-win for the individual and for the organization. So a lot of time we have to work on some specific trait. You said interruptions, that's very common. You're interrupting, you're taking over the conversation, you are, dominating other people who do not appreciate it. People are feeling intimidated by you. That's a very common, specifically when surgeons are leaders. So I have many examples for people that, once they had the 360, once they committed, they were able to really change. They were able to talk last. They were able to hold and not answer the email immediately with their feelings, and that made them more successful as leaders, and that helped us as an organization. So many examples like that.
Great, thank you. So one of the questions actually that we got was from someone that is a physician who is transitioning from a clinical role to an executive role. And their question was, how do you ensure success? Any advice?
I'll let you go first.
I think success is many things, right? Success is, people often ask me, well, what's the secret for success? And there's no one secret. It depends upon the individual, their goals, and then the resources and the efforts that we, put into it. So what we provide the opportunity to select a coach. We provide the support. From my point of view, I'm fully there to support the leader who is getting coaching, and then I am also there to do whatever I can to help them achieve their goals. But the rest is really on the individual to spend the time to meet with a coach, to work on these behaviors and it's hard work, it's not easy, and to accept criticism and say, you know what, this is an opportunity for me to get better. So, that's, we cannot guarantee success, but when you have your boss that is committed, the coach that is provided to you and committed, and the individual is committed, I think 3 of these are very good ingredients for success.
Yeah. Another question we have is, what is your coaching philosophy, and do you apply the same philosophy to everyone that you work with? So I would think this would probably be something that, Diane, you could answer for us.
I do have a coaching philosophy. It's really rooted in adult learning theory. And I firmly believe in positive psychology. Go with what's working, flush that out, trajectory forward. It's mindful of the past. People often know how they got somewhere, but now what do you do? And so my philosophy is forward thinking. Go with what's working, go on your positives, mitigate what you can, but always working towards your strengths.
Caveat there, it's the I cannot agree with that. Sometimes, your strength can also be your weakness.
Oh yeah.
So, it's, for surgeons, just the example, what's gonna get you success is you learn quickly, you apply quickly, you're precise, you are very, very kind of, methodical, and you're the commander in chief. And so the surgical mindset, if you think about, orthopedic surgeons, neurosurgeons, ophthalmology, whatever that is, that's the mindset that works in your role. That's the mindset that can hinder you from being a great leader. So, I would just say, yes, know what your strengths are, but know that exact strength can be perceived a weakness and actually can limit your growth.
It can derail you. Sometimes surgeons are so good at assessing so quick, they almost forget that they're assessing. So when you talk to people about what does the situation, what do you see in the room, what do you notice in the room, what do you hear in the room, it's almost like taking them back to medical school and saying you assessed before you ever diagnosed.
Yeah, but I think also for surgeons, because you're responsible and you make the decisions, you rarely kind of say, okay, what do you think? And what do you think? And what you make the decision, and that's really helpful for you as a surgeon. But as a leader, it's very important to sit back and say, so what do you think? And then also surround yourself with people that don't think like you. And it's hard for a surgeon, to have, different people. Some of them may take maybe a week to think about something. For a surgeon, a week is like 10 years.
It requires a kind of bravery almost to bring to the table people that think differently and maybe will respectfully disagree. It's a bravery for physicians and non-physicians.
Yeah, and it's important. I think it's key.
And, also being patient enough and empowering your team to be able to maybe make mistakes and learn from them, rather than having that physician mentality where you want to go in and fix the problem, right? Just like you said, to be able to take a step back, but also be able to allow somebody else to try and fix the problem themselves.
Yeah,
and
so I'll give
empower
you a perfect example, and really a shout out to one of our leader that's I can name him, Steven Spielman, who is our COO of the physician organization. We had a hurricane, remember last week, Hurricane
Yes.
Beryl, and he has a team. So we have a team at the PO that really managed that hurricane, and as you know, Houston was really hit hard, and there was no power, and still some people even today don't have power, more than a week after. One thing he told me is that he did, and he's a leader and could give him credit, he gave that team, was a more junior team, none of them went through a hurricane before, maybe one of them, but not most of them, lead that event, and he was there to watch. I was even new, this was my first hurricane, but he was there to watch, and it kind of gave the team, empowered the team to go through, and they did a fantastic work. But that's really what a great leader is. You don't go and say, I did 5 hurricanes, let me tell you what to do.
Yeah.
You just let them make the decisions, and he was there for them, but he didn't take over.
Mitali, I actually see this in you a lot. I've seen your leadership, and I've seen you, you're perfectly okay with not knowing how to do things the best. You're one of the best leaders I've ever met.
There you go.
I've met a few people. I've met a few people. I've seen you have the ability to critically think and lead, not micromanagement. And the opposite of micromanagement is trust building. You trust them. And you let them know that it may not be the way you want to do it, and sometimes you may just try not to overcompensate, but the people that work with you want to succeed because of the faith and the trust that you've had in them, to just let it go. It may not be the way you wanted to do it. I've seen it in you 1,000 times.
And I cringe every time I have to hold myself
I know.
back.
I know.
Which I'm pretty sure Dr. Schall's
I know.
kind of a little bit like that.
No, I'm very patient. I'm known from my patience.
Great. So what are, how do you overcome some of the stigma that's associated? And we talked a little bit about there's different types of coaching. There's coaching where you're coaching for high performance and, talent and all of that. And then you also have coaching, which is remedial. And a lot of times coaching gets a bad name because it's like, my boss wants me to get a coach, I must be doing something wrong or what have you. So how do we
So
how
for
do we
me, it's
overcome?
very easy. I offer it to everyone.
Okay.
And say, this is, we offer it at the
Great.
PO, at this level of leadership. You start, and then if I have something that I want them to work on, I would say it from the beginning so they know what they need to work on. So it's very transparent, and it has nothing to do with stigma, and really make it very clear that this is an investment in them.
Years ago, it was more for problems and issues. And we're talking 15 years ago. It is absolutely the opposite now. Most organizations see it as a positive investment. Occasionally a blind spot, but a blind spot doesn't mean that your vision's all terrible.
Correct.
Okay. You still can have good vision with a
excellent
blind
vision.
spot.
No, you
Okay.
have 20/20 vision. Everybody actually has a blind spot. The
Yeah.
question is how big that blind spot is.
That's a metaphor I'm going to use again. But really,
Got it from a retina surgeon,
Yes,
right?
everyone has a blind spot.
But I really think that in today's world, it's very rarely actually that it's used for behavior modification. Rarely. And most people will do other ways to mitigate behaviors. People, if they're going to spend the money, they're going to spend it on high potentials. Most leaders need to actually ask for the coach more than they're offered the coach. It's considered almost a privilege or a rite of passage. I get a lot of leaders who switch jobs, and part of their employment condition is that they bring me along. And that's very frequent. And so it's really seen as a perk, and it's seen as a way to elevate your leadership more than it is ever seen as a negative, especially in today's world.
Great. That's really, really reassuring and great to hear.
Yeah.
So we are almost at time. One last question. How and when do you fire a coach?
I asked Diane before we started, have you been fired?
And I said 3 times. Well, the person was decided that their current role was not sustainable for them, and they left. So I consider that being fired, even though they left. Like any relationship, sometimes they just don't work.
Yeah, I think that it's really critical that if it's not working,
You get
you
out.
just, the coach, as we talked about, it's a privilege. It's something that should be useful. And if you are not looking forward to your meeting with the coach, I would say consider
You might
firing
wanna
the
switch.
coach. It should
Yeah.
be something that you look forward to, something that you find useful, something that is an investment in you.
All right. Well, thank you both so much
Thanks, Michelle.
for all your contributions, for sharing all your insights and knowledge. And thank you to our audience for joining us. If you enjoyed today's session and would like to learn more about ACHE, the American College of Healthcare Executives, please visit the Southeast Texas chapter's website at ache-setc.org and learn more about the organization and our upcoming events. We have a busy year ahead of us, educational and networking events, and so we would love for you all to get more involved with the organization, with the chapter. Have a great rest of the day, and thank you again for joining us.